So we have a jet upside down, and what I figured out is that I can mount the servo in that spot right there with the control arm. That's about that long. I will show how long that is, but if I glue a gear door sort of attachment point like that and hook that up into the servo, this works perfectly. So basically I just took a piece of G10 and cut it into the shape, and you can see I'm just test trial here. This is the clevis. I'll obviously remove this and hook it up onto that, and we'll glue this to that location there. We'll get it painted white, and once that's done we'll show the door actually working, and then we'll move on to the other side of the gear doors. So for context, these servo arms are about 55.3 millimeters in length, and the distance from, let's see, from the spline to the servo looks to be about 46 millimeters. So there we go. We're gonna scuff that area up, and we're gonna scuff our new horn up as well, and we're gonna epoxy that right there. So we're epoxied on both doors, and you can see that one has a servo, so we still need to mount the servo on this side, but we've made the markings. And the reason I chose this spot is because it just minimizes how many cuts I have to make in this bulkhead. So that's why the geometry worked out the way it did today. So I forgot to put my my harness, basically have the servo plug in here, and the reason I like to do that is because if I need to replace this servo, the connector is right there. But what I did instead is I got a service loop. Basically, you know, I left a long loop of servo cable here and there. And the first time that I'm needing to replace the servo and I pull this out, I will add the connector right there. So that's what these service loops are. Just, you know, excess wire just looped under there, so that when it's time to replace things, I have a much easier time. Here we have the final setup. Seems to work well. So that's the door closed. Closes are about 2050 PWM, so just a little over 2000 PWM, and opens up fully around 1000 RPM. So this should work just fine, and I'm happy with that result. With the gear door servos for the mains figured out, we're gonna move on to the main gear door here and the gear. So I'm gonna pull the gear out. We need to install a servo there. Looks like a mini size servo. We're gonna install that, and we're gonna Loctite all the screws that we need to here, and then we're gonna get rid of that pneumatic cylinder, and I think I'm gonna put my servo either under here or somewhere on the side here. We'll see what works out the best. So here's the front gear. Pulled it out of the plane, and we went through and Loctited all the screws on the gear. The next thing to do was install the servo. You can see that's also installed, and this will require a mini servo. In my case, I'm using the FreeSky 5301. Should be plenty of torque for this task, and that's sort of how it goes in. So at this point, the next thing we're gonna do is, in the kit, you get, with your landing gear, you get a package with this linkage in there and a few screws, and the goal of that, I believe, is that is the linkage that's gonna go onto this point here, like that, and be linked to the servo arm that goes back here. So we're gonna install that, get everything to length, and then we'll be able to put this back in the jet. Word of caution, actually, if you take off these screws right here, there's a couple, there's one on this side and one on the side to Loctite them. Do them one after the other. If you do them together at once, this whole assembly will pop out, and there's very tiny ball bearings in here that are a pain in the butt to put back. You can put it back with a lot of grease and kind of getting them to stick back, but just a word of caution. Our servo linkage, I believe, is done. So this is what we wound up with, just for a close-up shot and what it looks like. So a linkage works really well. I centered everything, and now let's see if we can show this working. So yeah, this now works pretty well. There is a mechanical stop, so if when I move this, you'll see that this piece here contacts. So that is literally the hard stop, and for me that's happening at about 2000 PWM, so that should be fine. And then the other way, just the servo mechanically locks right around 900 PWM or so. But I think between 1000 and 2000 I should have pretty good range for my steering. The only other thing I wanted to bring up is the gear sits in this fashion on the plane. So two options. The way I chose to do this, I chose to put the servo arm facing into the bottom of the plane, so that limits the height of this, but I technically could have put the servo arm coming out over here, and had like the linkage go from the bottom side up to here, but I chose to do it this way. Feels like the geometry is more right angles, which is what I want, and that's what we're gonna go with. So getting the gear in here is not too complicated. What I figured out is you want to have it retracted, and then that way you get the clearance to stick it in. So in my case, I have it drop down, and then I will just gently work it in. So I start with one end, drop that in, and then slowly just work it back up. There it is. And now it's sitting roughly where it needs to be. We just make sure we clear all the wires, and then we're good to go. So just gonna reposition. You can see the holes there. And then so we'll screw this one in, we'll raise the gear so we have access to the other ones, and all will be good to go. We're at the nose of the aircraft, and I'm trying to figure out how servo is supposed to go. I initially tried to put it right here, which is why I had it on my previous F-16, but what I noticed was my previous one had this hinge point here had a spot kind of like that where I could have attached that to, and so the arm would kind of come like the servo arm would go like this. Also, the gear that came with that jet was such that there was enough room between where the gear mounts and this bulkhead to actually have servo arm. But with the new JP gear and this particular version of the jet, looks like that is not going to be the case. So I decided to put the servo on this side and basically go up and down. And the reason for that is basically this was the only spot where it would work. The wheel kind of comes all the way back here, so attaching it to this doesn't quite work. And then you need room in here for the steering servo to go in, and you need enough room for this arm to retract down, but also to not touch the gear assembly. So I'm going to mount the gear assembly in place and show you what that looks like. But for now, that is how our wiring is going to be routed. So that's the servo for the gear door servo, and I can reach this, and it bolts in from this angle. So 4 screws, 2 here, 2 behind that, and the servo comes out and can be replaced if I need it to be. Lock nut and 2 bolt through, and then I glued this piece of G10 fiberglass to the gear door to act as a point to draw the gear door down. So that works pretty well. I'll show how that looks in a few seconds. Okay, so here is the final operation. And just make sure everything clears as you see here. That looks good. And we have nothing interfering. Gear door is pretty clear of all the stuff that it needs to be clear of. And then I'm going to drop the gear, and since I haven't programmed this into the gear controller, go the other way around. Okay, and here's the gear door. Seems to work as expected. So that's nice and tight. It's not going to come open in flight, and it opens just fine. So I'm happy with that. I might pull the gear out and just add some more supporting structure between this block of wood and the intake here, the fiberglass intake, just to prevent the fuselage here from deforming. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with the result. And so far, the only area that's left on the plane is the canopy lock and the canopy raise and lower, which I will have to figure out how to get rid of as well. So this is looking really good. I'm very happy about how that turned out.